Okay, this is going to be an example of how to create an overlay for MoorMap. The first thing you need to do to create an overlay is get a background image of whatever you want to overlay. In this case, we're going to use the arid Lewin map. So we pull that up. It doesn't matter if we leave the annotations because for this example, we're just going to be replacing these labels. So you're going to take a screenshot of that. Then we're going to go out of the game and find our screenshot. It's right there. We're going to copy that to another folder where we can work on it. You can work on it right in the screenshot folder, but I prefer to have everything nice and neat. Now we need to open that file, and the paint program I choose to use is paint.net. It is free. It contains all the features that you need to deal with an overlay. Specifically, it has the ability to do layers, and it has the ability to store a target or TGA file. This is the file that we just took the screenshot of. Now this screenshot is in the native game resolution that I run at, which is 1920 by 1080. The problem is the original map image is actually 1024 by 768. So the very first thing we need to do is get it back to its original size. Otherwise, the overlay won't match the map, and when they're stretched to fit the screen, the overlay will be all skewed. So now we have what will become the background for our overlay. Now, obviously, because of the term overlay means something laid over something, we're going to create a new layer. And that will become our overlay. You'll notice that the checkered background on the layer, everything is transparent initially on the overlay. Now what we want to do on this particular overlay, we're going to simply go in and pick part of the image that has a label. And I'm not going to be very neat on this. I'm not going to worry about getting rid of the background lettering here of the original label. I'm just going to make a new label on top of it. Obviously, if you were doing this for yourself, you'd want to clean up on your overlay, add a little bit of masking to get rid of the original letters. But for our example, that's not necessary. So the first thing to do is to create some kind of new text, and we use the text tool. And we're going to pick Arial fonts. Pick 12 pixels is a little small. I believe these were about 14 pixels high. And we're going to simply type Thorin Hall, put a character turn in there, put in Homesteads. Whoops, helps if you type it correctly. There. Now this font is a little hard to see, so we're going to bold it so it becomes a little bit thicker, a little easier to see. But you can see that the text, especially when you zoom back out, it's still very hard to read with all the background clutter. So instead, what we're going to do is we'll turn that into some of the highlighting for the text. So we will grab a portion of this text, we will copy it, and we'll add one more layer to work on top of that. Get rid of the selection box, and we will paste it, and you'll see that we have the same exact text, only offset, and it's sitting on top of that. You could then take your paintbrush and any color paint you want, and make sure your paintbrush is large enough, and just oops, I grabbed I want just the black. We're going to grab our magic wand tool, pick that letter, basically everything with the lettering, and then we will grab our paintbrush and paint just the letters. So now we have that same lettering, only in white. We'll grab all of that, and we will move that up to the original lettering. We'll then move it up 2 pixels and to the left 2 pixels, so it looks like a highlight with a shadow background. The reason we do 2 pixels is because we're actually going to put the final lettering between the two. So now we've got that. Whoops. Let me put that there. Let me shrink that back down. We're going to add one more layer. So we're going to mix these down. And we could do multiples of these simultaneously while we're working on individual layers. But by collapsing the two layers down, now I can add another layer and do another insert of the same text. And in this case, we will add the final font that we want. Let's increase that slightly. There we go. We'll say, what did I pick the last time? It was like this robin's egg blue. That's not the exact color, but it's close enough. Grab our paintbrush, and there's our text in a funky blue color. I will then grab all of that and move that up on top of the white, and then I'll move it down one and to the right one, and it's now situated right between the white and the black. So you have a white highlight to the top left, a black shadow to the bottom right. The text becomes much easier to read, and that's it. That's a label. So that's the Thorns Hall Homestead. If I zoom out further, you can see that that's there. The red, you can see, doesn't match the example I did previously because, again, I didn't mask off any of the red text. That's fairly easy. You can use a magic wand to grab all of the color matching that red and then use the same paintbrush technique to simply put a tan color over everything that matched that. And that'll just wipe that all out, and that becomes part of your overlay. So here we have our text on the top layer, the shadow and the highlight in the second layer. We're going to move this layer down, so now we have everything that represents our overlay. In this case, just the text. If I remove the background layer, you'll see that that's all the image has, is just that one label. So normally we would add labels for all of these other labels. You do the same thing for all of that text, anything that you want to overlay. I'm not going to go through that effort in this example, just this one Thorns Hall Homestead is sufficient. So the last step on the overlay is to save just the portion that we want as the overlay. So we're going to get rid of the background. We'll delete that layer. We're left with just the text, and all the rest of this you'll see is the checkerboard pattern. That means it's transparent. We're going to save this as a target or TGA file. So we'll go down here, say file type, TGA. Now, there's nothing in the overlay examples with this name, so that's fine. There's no target files. We'll give it a name. We'll call this the Arid Lewin label example. Okay. Now it's going to ask us what do we want to do as far as the configuration, saving it. Just pick the automatic default because it will save your transparency if your paint program supports transparency. It needs to in order for a TGA file to work properly. So we'll say OK. Now our file is saved. If we look at that file, it's not going to look transparent because in the viewer, everything that's transparent shows up as black. That's okay. We don't mind. We're going to take this file and we are going to copy it into the folder where the plugin, the MoorMap plugin is. We want the plugins folder. So it's in Documents, not the program. The Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, the name of the plugin author, in this case Garen Stuff, and the plugin itself, which is MoorMap. So the path you're going to follow is going to be your Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Garen Stuff, MoorMap. Within that folder, we then need to find the Overlays folder. This is where all of your graphics overlays are going to go. Now I actually have, from the example that I created before, a folder called Labels. You would manually create a new folder. I'm just going to call this one Label Example. You can call it whatever you want for your overlay, but it has to be underneath overlays. You need to remember the path that you put it in, so you need to remember that folder name. And then we're going to paste our new overlay in there. We're almost done. Now we're going to go back into MoorMap. We are on the map where we want this overlay, so we have to go back into Arid Loon. There's the Arid Loon map. You'll see that there's already the overlay that I posted as the example, my labels. All right. We're going to add a new overlay. So we're going to go to Overlay Maintenance. If you hover over the button, you'll see it says Overlays. In the Overlay Maintenance, we're going to pick Overlay New. We're going to give it a name. We will say Label Example. And then this is the only really important part, the file name. This is the path to the overlay image relative to the overlay folder. What that means is it assumes that you're in this overlays folder, and then you need to type the name of all any subpaths beneath that. So label example, and it's not case sensitive. Now watch this, the positions values here. They will fill in as soon as I get the correct name in here. So in label example, my file name is, and I could copy and paste this, but Arid Loon label example .tga, and the file extension is important. You'll notice that as soon as I type the last character, the size automatically popped in. The maintenance window recognizes that that is a valid image. It is 1024 by 768, which is telling you it is the correct size for what you want. And then you're just going to hit save. You now have a new label called Label Example. It is actually turned on by default. You can turn any individual label off by simply deselecting it here. You also can turn it off with the Select Overlay button here. So if you have multiple overlays, and say you want the berries deed data when it is displayed, let's just turn all of these on. It's going to get ugly for a second. You'll see my two labels are overlapped here, one on top of the other. You don't know which one's which, so we'll turn that one off. Now you have the berries deed data, but my label is on top of it. Maybe I want the deed data to be on top of my labels. Well, I would simply move it up, and that changes the order in which they're overlaid. So if the two of them are both on at the same time, the deed data would show on top of my overlay. So you can basically, it's like taking the old projection transparencies, putting one transparency on the projector and putting another one on top of it. The order that they're layered is the order they will display. And that's all there is to it. That's how you create an overlay. The berries deed data overlays are not created that way. They are actually created as part of the plugin. They are created through what's referred to as soft-coded data. It's a data-driven overlay. The data is in all of these files. Don't mess with them, because if you do, well, obviously the deed maps will not show up correctly. But if you were to look in the files, this is what makes up this little label here and the positioning of all of these icons. It's all data driven. The custom overlays don't have the ability to do that. You can't create a custom overlay with a legend and data yet. There is plans at some point, if I get around to it, when I'm doing nothing better, to actually allow users to create data-driven overlays. But for now, they're simply static images. You turn them, let's close the maintenance, you turn them on and off once they're defined by simply saying get rid of my label example, and it's gone. You don't want to see berries, it's gone. If I go to another map, let me turn on this overlay. If I were to go to, say, the Shire or Falflorn Homesteads map, you'll notice the select overlays option is not there. There are no overlays for this map yet. If you were to go to one know if Yondershire actually does have, see the label is here, it has a set of deed data that's going to be in the next release of MoorMap. This is something somebody requested recently, and you'll notice that the label here says data by Garen as opposed to by Whiteberry. That's because this is the same layout as Whiteberry's Wonderful Maps, but the data, she stopped playing back after Isengard, so the data was collected by me. Other than that, it's the same data-driven overlay. You'll notice the other overlay doesn't show. They are specific per map. If I go back to Ered Luin, you'll see now that that overlay, those are all still listed here. And that's MoorMap overlays. I hope you enjoyed.